Coming up for many Kansas Cityans, these guys were the biggest story of the week, but we're tackling more mundane matters like who on earth is running Kansas? Why is New York City and Chicago seeing big drops in crime while we just recorded the highest number of homicides in 24 years? And we connect the dots on a slew of big stories making the news in this place we call home.
Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome everyone to this brand new year called 2018. Great to be back. I'm Nick Haynes. Some people have vowed to lose weight. Some get in better shape. Others have decided they want to make themselves far smarter and more interesting at parties. By watching this show every week, thank you for making that your New Year's resolution. We are at your service, or should I say, some of the hardest working journalists this side of the Mississippi River. From KMBC 9 News, Chief Political Reporter Michael Mahoney is with us. From the Kansas City Call newspaper, Senior Writer Eric Wesson. From the Kansas City Star, Chief Editorial Page Editor Colleen Nelson, and columnist and editorial writer Dave Helling. We begin in Kansas, where on Tuesday night, Kansans will hear the annual State of the State address. But who will deliver the annual message before lawmakers? Will it be Michael Mahoney, Kansas Governor Sam Brownback, who's been packing boxes ready to move to Washington, or is Lieutenant Governor Jeff Colyer?
The news is that it's going to be Sam Brownback. That shouldn't be news, but it will be. Everybody expected Sam Brownback to have moved on to this post in the State Department, the Ambassador at Large for Religious Freedom. That nomination is on the rocks, to say the least. Something is up. He did not have a successful hearing in Washington, primarily over gay rights and his position on that. Brownback, as you might remember, actually went back to Washington and lobbied on his own behalf to Senator McConnell on that. The nomination died without action at the end of the last session of the Senate. The White House has to re-nominate it and go through the process again. That means that Sam Brownback remains the governor for weeks, if not months. It also parks Jeff Colyer as lieutenant governor on the sidelines for a while, when Colyer anticipated being the governor by now, giving the State of the State speech, using it as a high-profile launching pad for his campaign for governor. That's a big setback for him. Brownback tweeted out this past week that I'm looking forward to the session and I'll be the governor until I resign, if that ever happens. It's a fascinating turn of events.
Well, Michael Mahoney says on the rocks is that nomination to be the ambassador at large and to be confirmed there. But is it more than that? Could it be killed at this point?
It definitely could be killed. The problem for Sam Brownback is he goes back to square one. It's as if nothing ever happened. So if you're nominated for a post and you're not confirmed by the end of the year, the president has to renominate you. He has to start the process over. So Brownback ostensibly would need another hearing. He would need to get out of that hearing and then have a vote. And Republicans in Congress, it's not just the Democrats, but Republicans in the Senate appear to have some misgivings about confirming Brownback to this job. And so he could be here for a while. And so he's grabbing a hold of the one job that he can get.
On our KCPT Facebook page, Celeste in Overland Park asks, what does it mean for Kansas that Governor Brownback isn't stepping aside and might not get renominated for the ambassadorship position? Dave?
Well, he is still governor, and so it doesn't change much. I mean, he has to put a budget together. He says he's doing that in concert with the Lieutenant Governor, Jeff Colyer. What it does do, though, is lessen whatever political oomph the governor has, because he's considered not only a lame duck, but the lamest of ducks in this weird limbo in the Senate. And so it will be easy for the leadership in the House and Senate to ignore whatever threats he might use or whatever efforts he might try to convince them to change policy. It really will become a session dominated by the legislators themselves and not so much the executive branch.
Michael.
And the thing that Dave is saying is right on the button here. The lamest of ducks, because last year during the session, the legislators clearly rejected his policies on taxes. They did their own thing in terms of a package of tax increases. Every governor in this final year begins to lose influence and power almost by the week. And that's if if the governor was well-liked and effective. And you got to look back to Kathleen Sebelius. When she was the governor of Kansas and then got appointed the HHS secretary, she remained the governor pretty much 7 days a week until then. There's lots of indications that Governor Brownback started to hand off. He did start to hand off authority to Jeff Collier. His influence on this, beyond the State of the State speech, is a big question mark, I think.
Now, you already mentioned that Jeff Collier, this doesn't do any help for him in this election year where he's going to be running for governor himself. One of the leading candidates for governor, Chris Kobach, has got a lot more time on his hands this week as President Trump announces he's disbanding his voter fraud panel. That's the Kansas Secretary of State helped lead. Is this a good thing for Kobach? Doesn't it just give him more time to campaign, Colleen?
Well, it does give him more time to campaign, but it's an embarrassment because President Trump made a big to-do about creating this voter fraud panel, arguing that millions of votes were cast illegally, and elevating Chris Kobach to lead this commission. And it crashed and burned at every turn. And lawsuits were filed, and Kobach asked states for sensitive information, and states refused to provide that information. The general feeling was that this was more aimed at suppressing votes instead of rooting out voter fraud. And so it does give Kobach more time to campaign, but it did not reflect well on him.
In fact, one of the things, Colleen, that Kobach told me this last week was he was starting to get concerned because the staff was all tied up with these lawsuits and the resistance and challenges by the Democrats and the all-out assault about whether or not this was a witch hunt and voter suppression. That's what the Democrats think. That he was became concerned that this was going to drag on through the summer and into the fall, and he presumes that he's going to win the primary and that it was going to complicate his campaigning in the fall. So he was looking at the political element of this.
Well, let's look at what we should be paying attention to as the lawmakers are returning. Complete the sentence for me, Eric Wesson. The biggest issue facing Kansas lawmakers in this brand spanking new year called 2018 is blank.
It's going to be tax for transportation. That's going to be one of the biggest things that they will have on their plate, deciding on what to do with that. Ethics reform, what they're going to do with that. Education. And I think one of the biggest things they're going to do is Republicans being able to get appointments that Governor Greitens is going to try to make.
Well, in Kansas at this point.
He's in Missouri.
He's in Missouri. That's okay, though. That's okay. We're still in Kansas, but do you think taxes is still a big issue for them?
Taxes is still a big issue.
Okay.
The Kansas, of course, will be how the legislature deals with the shortfall in funding for schools. The Supreme Court has said you are not adequately paying for your schools, has not told the legislature how much money they have to spend, so it isn't clear what target they need to hit, and it isn't clear at all, Nick, how they're going to get there. I mean, the common number you hear is $600 million, but that's an enormous chunk of cash. You'd either have to really slash spending in other parts of the state or do something that everyone doesn't want to do, which is raise taxes in 2018 and election year. They're really on a bit of a horns of a dilemma.
Did you pick a different answer?
Well,
Colleen?
School finance is absolutely the must-do because the Supreme Court set a deadline in the spring, and so and has suggested that perhaps schools would be shut down if this isn't addressed. But an offshoot of that is it's an interesting question we saw last session. As Michael said, lawmakers, including Republicans, really push back against the Brownback agenda, begin to raise taxes and undo what Brownback did. And the question is whether lawmakers will be willing to continue down that path this year in an election year and raise taxes to pay for schools.
And the biggest issue in Kansas for Michael Mahoney is blank?
Is clearly education and how they fund this. This is going to probably result in a tax increase, as Eric was talking about. One of the things, Nick, that I think everybody ought to be looking for when the governor delivers his State of the State speech this coming week, everybody expects him to, for the first time, directly address this issue of the Supreme Court ruling and their blank check of how many hundreds of millions of dollars that the state of Kansas is going to have to put forward. It is somewhere between the $600 million that Dave just mentioned and perhaps as much as $1.2 billion over several years. That is going to be a really tough nut for the bank book in Kansas. Look for Brownback to address that in his State of the State.
Now, while Kansas lawmakers don't return to Topeka until next week, Missouri lawmakers already hard at it in Jefferson City. Now, I was asking our reporters here to complete the sentence about their biggest issue facing Missouri lawmakers in this new year called 2018. Eric Wesson, I have a crystal ball to know that you thought it was the transportation and taxes because you just said it. But just like Michael Mahoney said on the last question, though, wouldn't that be a tough nut to crack for the checkbook, at least in Missouri, for them to raise taxes to help with the funding of crumbling highways in the state of Missouri?
Yes, it's going to be a tough sell. Hopefully, President Trump is talking about infrastructure repairs, so maybe they'll be able to.
He said that last year, though, and we never saw anything on infrastructure.
I think they're going to focus more on it now since they got this so-called tax reform out of the way. I think that's something now that they can focus on is the infrastructure, and I think he's putting people into place to have that discussion.
Colleen Nelson, the biggest issue facing Missouri lawmakers as they are back in action?
I think the biggest issue and biggest question is whether Governor Greitens and lawmakers can actually learn how to govern together. What we saw last year was a battle between Greitens and his own party. Republicans control everything in Missouri. They should be able to push through their agenda pretty easily, but Greitens seems unwilling to work with Republicans in a lot of instances. So I think it's a key question. We've already seen kerfuffles this week over the education, the Board of Education and appointments there. And I mean, Greitens and Republicans could do a lot if they actually chose to work together.
But didn't he do a lot in this last year, though, including the big thing that Republicans have wanted for years, which was the right-to-work legislation?
He did get some things done, but there was, as the session went on, there was growing frustration among lawmakers, and that has continued with some of the things he's done in the off season. And so we'll see if they are able to come back together to do the things that they're talking about, like huge tax cuts.
Biggest issue in Missouri as lawmakers are back in action, Michael Mahoney.
There are two things, and they're related. Number one, the pocketbook issue for all Missourians is there's going to be a vote this year on whether or not they're going to raise the gas tax. The proposal is for 10 cents on gasoline and 12 cents on diesel. I think that there is a mood in Missouri to probably take a look at this more seriously than in the past.
Don't they always say that, though?
No, it seems to be different. The other thing that is linked to is the fact that there is a major tax reform package that some state senators and lawmakers, reps want to deal with, similar to the Kansas package in some fashion. The gas tax, the transportation issue, and this tax reform thing, along, as Colleen mentioned, the relationship between the governor and the two chambers his party controls are going to be the dominant issues.
But Dave Helling, on this program, you've said that Governor Greitens has designs on the White House at some point. Yeah. He's not going to be wanting to be seen as the candidate who increased taxes in the state of Missouri.
Right. I mean, I think that's going to be one of the central dynamics, not only for Governor Greitens, but most members of the legislature. They just don't want their fingerprints on a tax increase, Republican members, particularly in an election year. So I think that'll be the big issue. My guess is there won't be a lot done in Missouri this year. It's just that some of the moving parts are so complicated, and the disagreements between the governor and particularly the Senate are so big that unless there's a sort of a real détente there, it'll pass a budget, let's get out of town. I think
there was already indications in the first day of the Senate last week that Senator Rob Schaaf of St. Joseph was going to bottle up everything Eric Greitens was going to be sending their way.
Having said that, though, Ryan Silvey, who was another huge critic, the senator from Kansas City, or the Kansas City area, was appointed to a very lucrative job on the Missouri Public Service Commission, and Greitens was able to get him off the floor of the Senate, which I'm writing this week and suggests that Greitens understands he needs to get along with the Senate more than maybe he did in 2017, but my guess is they just won't get much done.
The other big obstacle there is another state senator by the name of Gary Romine, who is absolutely furious about how the state's Department of Education has worked. And two angry senators are not a good recipe for anything.
Your own party.
I think another issue that's going to really come to the forefront, too, is going to be the low-income housing tax credits. Right. I think that's going to be a battle that Greitens probably doesn't want to get into, but it's going to be a battle.
Okay. As we look ahead to the new year, we can't ignore the past. We ended 2017 with the highest number of murders in Kansas City in 24 years.
And 149 homicides for 1 year is ridiculous. And if we come together, we can fix this thing.
All the more remarkable is that bigger cities like Chicago are posting sizable drops in the number of homicides, and New York City posted the lowest number of murders since the 1950s. The Kansas City Star, in an editorial, asks, what can Kansas City learn from New York City's declining murder rate? What can Kansas City learn from the Big Apple's massive cut in murders? Colleen Nelson.
Well, you're absolutely right. Kansas City is the outlier here. As you look across the 30 largest cities in the country, their murder rates are down 5%. We're seeing double-digit increases. And there are a lot of things. New York is not an apples-to-apples comparison to Kansas City, but they do have more cops on the street per 100,000 residents. And they are doing some different things that we're not doing. And this should be kind of a hair-on-fire moment for Kansas City. I mean, this should be one of the most urgent things that our officials are addressing. And they should be looking at New York, they should be looking at Chicago, which saw drops last year. They should be looking at our peer cities and saying, what are they doing that we're not doing? And you just don't hear that sense of urgency sometimes.
Are they looking at those other cities here in Kansas City?
Probably not, and I think the difference is the demographics are totally different, and both of those cities are about twice as large as Kansas City. I think Kansas City is suffering for one thing that Missouri suffers with statewide, and that's these unyielding control of guns. We have way too many guns on the street. There's, anybody and everybody can carry a gun now. And I think when that law passed, that legislation passed, I think they foresaw this to be a problem in the urban core, but you have conflict resolution. People are talking about it, but a lot of our homicides are domestic. It's people that know each other, they get into arguments, there's easy access to guns, and the next thing you know, you have a homicide. So I don't know if there's a solution to this problem other than getting people jobs and doing something about conflict resolution, but I do hope it gets a lot better.
You mentioned the gun issue. Some people swiftly go to the gun issue and say there's simply too many weapons on the streets. St. Louis just finished a buyback program that took nearly 900 guns off the streets in just 6 hours. Apparently, people waited in long lines to surrender their weapons. But Kansas City Mayor Sly James isn't a fan and doesn't want a similar program here. Why, Michael?
He is not impressed that it really works. Kansas City has done gun buyback programs in the past, and we continue to have this problem. For the mayor or the mayor in St. Louis to say that we need local control over gun issues is just a non-starter. It's not going to happen in Jefferson City. It's not going to happen in the state of Missouri. Gun buyback programs are limited in their effectiveness because the people that are going to sell their guns back to the cops are probably people that are not going to be using the gun the night before in a robbery. So,
and another thing with gun buyback programs as well is people turn in rusty guns that are down in the bottom drawer. Some of them don't have firing pins. Some of them aren't usable, and they take those guns and turn them in. So those guns are okay to get, but Pookie and Ray Ray's guns that they have on the street that they're breaking into people's cars because now people leave their guns in the car while they're in the shopping mall, those are the guns that are the problems. It's not those guns that they're getting from those gun buybacks.
We will make a mistake in Kansas City if we just focus on what they're doing in New York or just in Chicago. Kansas City's murder rate is higher than the murder rate in Denver, Dallas, Houston, Memphis, Indianapolis, Seattle, San Diego, Indianapolis, other cities that are peer cities. It isn't just New York, and it isn't just guns. It isn't just cops on the street. It isn't just mental health. It's all of it. And I think what we were trying to say in the editorial, Nick, is don't throw up your hands and say this is an unsolvable problem that because it's so complicated. Other cities have done it. Other cities very like Kansas City. And there are lessons we can learn in all of these areas that may help Kansas City bring that number down.
Our next segment is called Whatever Happened To. Over the last few weeks, we may have taken in a few more holiday treats and liquid libations and spent a little less time paying attention to the news. So in this quick fire round, we keep tabs on those big stories we may have missed or forgotten about. So whatever happened to the brouhaha over KCI Airport? You may remember late last year there was a mutiny on the council and what seemed like an effort to ditch the airport's new design team, Edgemoor, in favor of a rival, perhaps AECOM or Burns & McDonnell. So has that been resolved, Michael Mahoney?
Largely it has been, but this next week, starting this next week, a series of meetings at City Hall to deal with the dissatisfaction that some city council members have with this memo of understanding with Edgemoor. They want more money placed into social programs and supportive social programs, a lot more than the $10 or $15 million that Edgemoor is proposing right now. There'll be a set of meetings over the course of January to see if they can resolve this. It's not just one or two council members that have problems with this. As that earlier vote suggested, there are a number of people that are not happy with this, the community benefits agreement that's with this. The airport's going to go forward. They'll probably actually start real construction later this year, but there are things that need to be resolved.
So Edgemoor is still in, Eric?
Yes, Edgemoor is still in. Jeff went and met with each council person, came to an understanding about what was going on. I think there's a lot more communication now between Edgemoor and the council, because before the communication was between the council's lawyer and Edgemoor rather than the council. So now I think he's engaged everyone in that process, and I think it's going a lot smoother.
Whatever happened to the Convention Hotel? This week was supposed to be the groundbreaking for the long-awaited new downtown Convention Hotel. It never happened. Is there now uncertainty about that project's future?
There's always uncertainty around the hotel. There has been since they first announced it. I think they're closer than ever. I think we will see something in the spring. There are reports now that some of the financing is getting just a little loose, and interest rates are going up in the Trump economy. So it remains a very sort of intricate project, but I think it's on track for some sort of construction work to start this year.
Okay, so you're still optimistic on that then, Pauline?
I'm reasonably optimistic, but we've seen a series of delays. This is not the first delay, and we still haven't broken ground. And so until dirt is flying, there's only so confident you can be.
Okay, whatever happened to Ronnie Burt over the holiday? The Me Too wave hit Kansas City as Kansas City's tourism chief, Visit KC CEO Ronnie Burt, is accused of harassing and bullying female employees. But Burt says his executive authority has been curtailed, and the chairman of the Visit KC board has asked for his resignation. But is he still in the top job selling Kansas City to the rest of the world?
Yes, he still is and probably will be, but he's been severely chastised. What little I know of Mr. Burke, and I've met him a number of times, he's not the sort of fellow that wants tight reins placed on his ability to do what he believes to be his job. He also has some difficulties with his boards. Whether or not he stays in that position throughout 2018 remains a question mark, but he's in the job now, even after a pretty tough board meeting at the end of the year.
So, and whatever happened to Steve Clicker? He's the Johnson County Commissioner that was the deciding vote, apparently, on ousting County Manager Hannes Zacharias over the holiday. A female manager at the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority accused Clicker of grabbing her by the face and shaking her head violently in what she told the Star was a domineering and egregious abuse of power. Is he back serving on the Johnson County Commission?
He is, but he's not on the Transportation Authority board, which is where he ran into problems. And so his term on the Transportation Authority board ran out at the end of the year. He did not ask to be reappointed to that board. He was not reappointed to that board. So he's been replaced there, but he still has his job on the Johnson County Commission.
On our Facebook page, Jennifer asks, whatever happened to Wyandotte County? This is Mayor Holland's last week on the job. What impact will a new mayor have on KCK? Does it signify a major change in direction? I will say it's been a very difficult week for the last week.
Well, we can assure Jennifer that Wyandotte County is still there. It didn't go anywhere over the holidays. It still occupies land, and Mark Holland, the outgoing mayor CEO, is leaving with a bang. He remains extraordinarily angry at the fire union in Kansas City, Kansas, because he believes that his effort to reduce costs cost him the job in the election against David Alvey, and so he released a rather incendiary report claiming that shift trading in the fire service in Kansas City, Kansas has actually cost taxpayers about $1 million for firefighters who were paid for not working.
Why was it, though, that almost every single commissioner didn't even bother to show up at the commission meeting on Thursday night? Were they supporting the firefighters?
Well, yes, and they were not supporting Mark Holland, who is a lame duck who has no real
So what could we expect of David
anymore.
Alvey, then the new mayor, Michael?
This is going to be a very different administration. Things are going to change in the unified government. Mark Holland had a set of views about where things should go and wanted to continue the progress, continue the development on the western side of it. David Alvey has a different view of what needs to be done in KCK and Wyandotte County, and that he wants more attention paid to the neighborhoods, the different subdivisions of Wyandotte County. Look for Mr. Alvey to pay more attention to that, try to improve basic services all around the old part of KCK, if you will, not the new part. It's going to be a different administration. Different.
Just very quickly, but he will be beholden in some ways to the fire union, and we'll have to keep a close eye on.
Now, if Mayor Mark Holland was battling the firefighters in this last week of his administration, the NAACP over the holiday was at war with Westport after the city council votes just before the holiday to privatize Westport sidewalks on weekends, seeking to address a dramatic increase in gun violence. Sidewalks in the entertainment district will be barricaded between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. on weekend nights, and people will have to pass through metal detectors to enter. The NAACP is concerned about racial profiling, but Westport business leaders say they've hired 4 civil rights observers to monitor each entrance and report possible violations to the city's Human Rights Department. So does that ease those concerns now, Eric Wesson?
Well, they had civil rights people and human relations people at Power and Light District, and that didn't ease any of the tensions or any of the problems. I guess my concern is, why would the NAACP wait till the ordinance is passed? Because they've been talking about this for months. Why didn't they get on the front end of the conversation rather than after it's done? Now they're in a reactionary position rather than being in an offensive position. So I'm concerned about that, but I think they always have a valid point. I think when you deal with the NAACP, is that kind of program.
Michael, briefly.
The Westport businesses really want this to settle Westport down. Whether or not you give away the public streets to a private district is really questionable to a lot of people, and they believe it to be a Band-Aid, not a solution.
And that is our Week in Review. Our thanks to this week's news reviewers from the Kansas City Star, Colleen Nelson, and KMBC 9 News, Michael Mahoney. From The Call, Eric Wesson and Dave Helling of your Kansas City Star. He's been on vacation for a few years. I'm Nick Haynes from all of us here at KCPT. Thanks for spending part of your New Year's weekend with us.